Hello, everybody, and welcome to our community talk. I am so excited for our conversation with Alderman David Moore as we talk about just, first of all, today is National Literacy Day, and I'm so excited because, as you all know, I'm a true supporter and lover of literacy, and just being able to have a conversation in which we're able to really engage and talk about what next steps we need to do, how ourselves, our lovers of readers and lovers of reading, and how it can help us, and then really how can literacy transform our community. And so I was so honored and excited when I heard that Alderman David Moore was available for this conversation on today, because as we'll get into in our conversation, he's definitely been a strong leader in our community and really is going after making some great changes. So before we jump into the conversation, I first want to say welcome to our conversation, Alderman Moore.
Thank you so much, and I am honored. I really appreciate it. I thank God for Ms. Janice Ellis connecting us and being able to work together just to be a blessing to our community. So thank you so much.
Thank you. So I'm going to do a introduction about Mr. Moore, just in case you all are unfamiliar with his work and his impact, and then we're going to jump right into the conversation. So whether as a private citizen or a public official, David Moore believes no job is too small or too large for him to tackle to improve the lives of neighbors and constituents, both locally and statewide. Alderman Moore believes that literacy is essential to developing a strong sense of well being and citizenship. Reading also stimulates a child's imagination and expands his or her understanding of the world. Alderman Moore believes that knowledge is power. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk to David Moore, Alderman Moore. So, my opening question for you is, how has reading played a role in your life?
Well, let me start by saying this. As people know, I'm also running for Secretary of State, and what's interesting and what people don't know is just people think the Secretary of State office is just about driver services. You get your sticker there and you get your plate there, but they did not know that the libraries are under the jurisdiction of the Secretary of State's office and report up to the Secretary of State's office. And so, as I'm running for Secretary of State, one of my key focal points are our youth and young adults, but also literacy for our not only our youth and young adults, but our families as well. It's played a role in my life because I've had family members who did not know how to read. And when we talk about literacy, it's not just about reading, because if someone is able to read, there's also that literacy in that definition. It's about listening and communicating and
Yep.
speaking. And so all of those elements are in literacy. Most people think, hey, you just got to go in there and read. There are some people, they speak or and write to the way that they talk, and
Yep.
that sometimes may be improper. And so that was a happened in my family. It happened with people that I grew up with, and instead of about teasing them, it was always for me, how can I help? How can I improve and add value to that person? And so I've carried that on in my professional life as well.
I love it. And as we have people coming in, I just want to say hello. There's people in the chat that's saying hello to Neil Jackson. She said, I didn't know you were running Alderman Moore. So that's exciting for people to be learning about the work you're doing. And also, this is a conversation for all of us. So I have my script of questions that I want us to engage in. But if you're watching either later or now, you can put in the chat a question that I will be sure to pose and make it a part of our conversation as well. I really love how you talked about how it impacts a family dynamic, and just how reading, which many of our families don't realize, is not just about the words on the page, but can you communicate, right? Can you say what you mean in a way that people can fully understand, and just how people can look at you in a very negative sense. So we talked about your family, and this is where I love to know a little bit more about your journey when it came to reading, as we talk about how it impacts the community. Did you always enjoy reading, and why or why not?
Robert Taylor Homes of Chicago. I guess I don't know if it happened on purpose or by accident. The library was, I lived on the second floor, and the library was actually on the second floor next door to us. When I
Really?
lived in Robert Taylor Home, 4429 South Federal. Then we went from the second floor to the third floor, and then the library was just under us. So I always have had access to the library. And so I grew up with two older sisters, living in the projects, and me being the only boy in the 70s. My mom didn't want me to go downstairs, didn't want me to get in any trouble or anything like that. And so my only escape, because I didn't, my sisters used to try to make me turn their ropes for them because there was just three of us, and I didn't want to sit up there and turn any rope. And so I said, I'm going to the library. So I spent a lot of my time in the library on the second floor, 4429 South Federal. And that's where it began for me. And then we in school we used to have these. It was always sometimes in the spring you used to get so many points for doing something, and you get to fill out that form to get books. Oh, I was just so excited about that every time that time came around each year, and I would fill out my forms to get new books and everything. And so for me early on, reading it was fun to me, and it was also an escape, and it also taught me to at some point expand even my vocabulary as a young person.
I love it. You talked a lot about just the dynamics of it being an escape and just the accessibility for you, which I think is so important when we think about our communities and what's happening now. And so my next question goes to the importance of literary hubs. And I know when we usually think about literary hub, we just talked about a library, but I just think about how can we create all these new innovative ways to get kids engaged, because as you know, doing your work in the community, part of it is kids may not feel as interested about reading, right? And so I have conversations with parents a lot just about how can I get my child engaged, and how can I get them to want to go to the library, or how can I get them to want to do these things. I just would love, just even as you made that point about being, your role would be overseeing the libraries. Why do you think it's so important for us to have these literary hubs in the community? And should we rethink what those hubs look like?
For me, it's like when people go to coffee shops, if you will, right? And there's always some books there because there are people who like to read while they're in the coffee shop. So there are those coffee shops that offer books. Where our kids are not going to coffee shops a lot because they shouldn't be really drinking a lot of coffee. But when any play space that they go into, any activity space, like we have a skating rink here in the 17th Ward, and one of the things I'm discussing with them now, let's create a space just at near somewhere whether you do the rental skates at or somewhere where you have books and when people are like downtown, because there are people that go to skating rinks, they might not even skate, but they'll sit there and may read a book as they're watching their friends. We set up in our ward and all of our precincts what we call reading boxes, or we call info boxes. So it's not only for information from my office, but people begin to put reading materials in there. So children who live on that block or live nearby when they're going to school, who may not have access to reading materials, can go to that box and pull out books and everything. So making it accessible, and it's to your point, like I said, I probably wouldn't have gone if it wasn't next door to me or just downstairs from me. So those hubs become very critical of how we think we should place, and not just in terms of library, but in terms of spaces that our youth, children, and young adults use, and make sure that we have some type of reading material there. Or right now, as we deal with technology, VR, using what is important to me now, using virtual reality technology. When you use these and get our kids into that, there are programs and technological advances that when you put on those glasses, you can actually, it's a different fun of form. You can go and you're in this whole big library, and you can pull a book off, and you can now you're virtually doing it, and it's the fun of it, but also you got something in your hand as well, whether it's from a virtual standpoint, but which can lead to you going to the library and picking up real books. So we have to use technology as well to get people involved in reading, writing, and communications.
I love that point because I think sometimes, for whatever reason, we look at technology as evil, right? Like it's taking our kids away. It's not allowing them to want to be a reader. It doesn't make them engaged. But at the end of the day, I love the point of how do we marry the two? Why fight the curve? Like we are evolving. It is a new state of mind. We're in a new uh as we evolve and as the world evolves, so does the way we engage kids, right? And so, why are
Absolutely.
we fighting the curve of integrating technology? A lot of times, we'll say, "Put your phone away, put this away, get a book," and that's true because you do need to be able to unplug. But how do we able to show them, like, even the thing you feel like is more engaging is actually going to help you, like you said, escape. Like I've seen VR things where I'm reading maybe about Africa. I've never been to Africa, but in this VR, I could go to Africa in the book,
You
right?
could go to absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
It like comes to life to me. It's like a game. Like, oh my gosh, I'm able to imagine these pages. And so I think I love that point of like how do we make reading just come to life for our kids?
Absolutely,
Um,
and that encouraged them to even so once they get into that and then they're reading and they're learning about it and because they are in that world and in that experience and it becomes a page turner for them. They want to get to the next thing because they're actually now living it not only the way we grew up, which was good too, imagination, but they're also getting to see it in a virtual world.
Yes. And I think this is a perfect segue to my next point, which is reading and home life. And so I know we have some parents on here, we have educators on here who are watching. And I believe that it is so important that as we're trying to engage kids, that we understand that we are models as adults when it comes to reading and in our engagement and what we're doing. And a lot of times when I'm talking to parents, they're like, I'm gonna put them in your book club because I need them to be a reader. I'm gonna put them in this activity because I want them to be a reader. But mom, dad, grandma, auntie, cousin, are you a reader? Right? Like kids are okay. Why are you making me do something you don't even like doing? You know what I mean?
Absolutely,
So I would
absolutely.
tell them all the time, like, what ways are you integrating reading in your everyday? Because guess what? Our kids love being with us. Like my son, if he's playing a game, he's like, Mom, come watch me play a game. The same way, if he's reading a book, he'll say, Mom, can you read a book too? Okay, we'll read a book together. I'm not putting you away so I can do something else. Let's do this as an activity together. So I just wanted us to kind of speak to why is it so important that reading is seen within the home. We've been talking a lot about these hubs outside of our spaces, but what would you say would be some advice for parents about what reading should look like within their actual households?
One of the things that I did with my daughter at a very early age is, and this gained her, a lot of independence, and it was the fact that I would, um, whether I read to her or whether she read something or we read even a newspaper article. The thing is, for me and her, and as I was quote unquote now reading it, what did you get out of it? I would want her thoughts, and I was like, wow, that's a great point because it when you're whether you're reading a newspaper or you're reading a book, it's like, what did you get out of it? And what instead of me dictating what she read, she's now being independent enough to talk about what she got out of it, and it becomes what we call creative communication, creative thinking, and everything. And so I think when parents do that more in that home life, that create more than just
Talking that good stuff, y'all. Y'all see how technology trying to go into our conversation, but as Mr. Moore comes back in, I wanted to make sure that we really listen to that. Like when we're reading and we're engaging in text with our kids, it's so important that one, we have a conversation with them about what we're reading so that they're able to see, okay, not only were they reading it, but we were reading it as well, and we're just as engaged. But it's an amazing way to have creative conversation. A lot of times we have these reading comprehension questions that we give kids, or we may have prompts that they have to do in school, but nothing tops oral conversation, right? A lot of times when we're wanting our kids to be you know, confident in the classroom, and we want them to be, you know, confident when they're doing their presentations. It starts with them having that confidence, talking to their parent, right? Talking to their grandparent. And so a lot of what Alderman Moore is talking about is like how we preparing our kids for the real world. How do we prepare them to just have conversations and articulate their thoughts about what they're reading? And so, Alderman Moore, you're back. I think he's back.
I think I'm back, but I don't know how strong I'm back.
Okay, but I was just out of you. I was going on with your point, and that I love the fact you were talking about the conversation you and your daughter would have after she was reading something. So if you want to continue on with that, I was just emphasizing how by doing that, we're preparing our kids when they're in settings where they have to articulate why they feel something or what they're learning, or when they have to do a presentation. Many of the kids can be intimidated by having to speak up in front of people. But the first practice is being able to talk to my parent about what I learned, you know? Cool.
Yeah, I am so sorry. You're freezing on my end, and I think it's my connection. I don't know why. And so you're going in and out, so I'm not hearing your question. I apologize.
It's okay. Can you hear me now?
And this is such a good This is such a good conversation.
I know.
So
That's what I
that's
told
what
my friend
technology
when we
does
started
sometimes.
getting
Unfortunately, this happens. And
it's okay. Let's see. Are you able to hear my question now? Because we're gonna make this work, y'all. While we are getting the connection strong, if you have a question that you would like for me to pose in our conversation, just
I'm going
put in the chat, and then we'll go from there. Yes, Alderman Moore, what did you say? Say it one more time. Then you say he's gonna leave and come back. One thing that, as you all know, we gonna keep this conversation going. One thing that I want us to recognize, would it be a National Literacy Day, is that if you have not already, this is the perfect day in order to pick up your favorite book and share it with the young person in your life, or for you to even engage in maybe that book that you have bought and you still haven't read yet. So even for me, I have this whole bookshelf of books behind me. I'm gonna pick it up if it finds interest to me. But I think it's so important on this day that we're able to not only be able to encourage the young people in our life to read, but ourselves to be able to go after the things that we've been trying to indulge in and read as well. One of the things that, if you may be unfamiliar with who I am, I'm Jareen McGorm. I'm the founder and executive director of Burst Into Books. And so the reason this conversation was so important for me when it came to talking about National Literacy Day is because literacy is what I believe is really going to transform our communities. The next question that me and Alderman Moore are going to talk about is how can we really rebuild our community through literacy? And I think one of the ways is that our kids are able to have access and opportunities because they know, right? You can't dream or want to go after something if you don't even know it's a possibility, or if you've never been introduced to it. And books is such a creative way to be able to take us out of our circumstances. I believe that as an educator for the last 13 years, I've seen kids who have been inspired by a book, right? I didn't even know that this was a possibility for me. They didn't even know about a particular person who also was a lover of music, and they were from Chicago. And oh my gosh, like, this is amazing. I remember when I first had my kids, what was one of the books that they were so involved with? We read Native Son and Toni Morrison, and them just being able to hear people talking their language and being able to see them saying things in the way that they best understood, it allowed them to dream for themselves. And so I would hope that on today, for National Literacy Day, that would be something that you are really being a supporter of as well. It's like, how can I inspire a young child today or a young person today through literacy? Who is someone that I think that they will see a mirror themselves, right? Literacy, a lot of times we talk about our mirrors and windows. It's a mirror where kids are able to see themselves, they're able to understand who they are. Another point when we talk about community literacy is kids understanding who they are, right? Them understanding the power of the past and the power they possess to change the future. And a lot of times when kids are unfamiliar with individuals, it's hard for them to see that, right? Yesterday, for example, me and my son watched Malcolm X, right? It's on Netflix. It's one of my favorite movies. But he's heard about who Malcolm X is, right? In our book club, they just read a book called Stamped, which is an amazing read that I would suggest that you get for your child. But it talks about many like African American leaders and just the history of racism and anti-racism and all these different things. But I bring that up because in us reading that book, my son has been awakened to names he never knew before, and he's curious when he sees it. So he was previously playing Madden, right? But he just read this book, Stamped. And in Stamped, it talks about Marcus Garvey, W. Du Bois, Malcolm X, Madam C.J. Walker. I mean, the list goes on and on. And Malcolm X was in that book. And so while I actually started watching the movie by myself, he saw me watching it and he was like, "Oh, I want to join you," right? It was because he was ignited through us at home reading and me watching this movie. It made his curiosity peak. And so I would encourage you to see where can you get your child to be interested in reading is by getting their curiosity to peak. I really hope that Alderman Moore is able to join back in. Technology, as you all know, can be our friend or it can be our foe sometimes. But I really enjoy what he's talked about so far. So if you are just joining, I'm going to do a very brief recap. And hopefully he's able to join before our time is up. So the first thing we talked about was the importance of literary hubs. And he started to talk about some areas within the community where we can create these literary hubs. We then talked about why is reading what role has it played in his life. And he talked about just being able to build confidence and communication with his family in the same ways that reading can help with our kids. And then we just ended with talking about reading in the home life. So I'm going to give us a couple more minutes, you all. Hopefully he'll be able to join back in. If for some reason he's not, we are going to have to do a part 2 of this conversation. Also, while we're here, I can plug an upcoming event that I'm actually doing with Alderman Moore, along with one of my brothers in this work of literacy, Joseph Williams. On November 13th, we are having a forum in which we will be talking about the importance of literacy as well. So if he's not able to get back on this evening, we'll definitely have an opportunity on November 13th to be able to discuss why is literacy so important and what are some ways that we can be able to do that work. The flyer is posted not only on Birth to Books page, but it also will be on our social media handles. And I really want to encourage people to be a part of that conversation. It is an open forum for people to come out and be able to engage in a conversation. As you heard, he is running for Secretary of State. And also, when it comes to us electing officials and wanting to do that work, it's important that we understand their stance. And so that is also why I thought this conversation was necessary, because it's important to know where people stand when it comes to the issues that matter to you. Also, through us being on the panel, myself and Joseph, we'll be able to bring 2 different perspectives, which typically are not always shared. He is a father of 5, 1 on the way. He's also super involved in Inglewood and throughout the city when it comes to literacy. He has the Mr. Father's Dad's Club. And so I'm excited about that conversation. And so he will be not only speaking on the importance of literacy as a father, but also as a community organizer and as someone who's very active in the school system. Myself, I'm a mother of a 10-year-old. I've been in education for the last 13 years. And I am, like I said earlier, the founder and executive director of Burst Into Books. And so the perspective I bring when it comes to literacy is not just about from a community organizer, but as a mother myself and also as an educator. So I'm going to continue to go, you all, with our next piece where I wanted to talk about rebuilding our community through literacy. And I see we have some people on here, and if he's able to join back in, I'll pull him in. But I would love for this to be an opportunity for us to have a conversation. And thank you for y'all engaging in the chat. So, rebuilding our community through literacy. What does that look like? It looks like my friend is back.
I'm trying. I'm trying.
He's back.
I'm trying.
I was holding down while you was gone.
Thank you. I apologize. This technology, hey, it happens for whatever reason.
I have been on, like you said, you're in the same spot. You do meetings every day. The same thing has happened to me, and we just never can control those things, right?
Right.
But I'm gonna bring it back, and I'm gonna come back to this question. So we were talking about the home life, and because you were definitely in a great point, and the part I had added when you had cut out is as you talked about when you and your daughter would read, you would ask her, what did she get? What did she learn? What stood out to her? And the only thing I wanted to add on, because I want you to continue to explain, was I was saying that that's where we start helping our babies with their confidence and them being able to explain what they're thinking. And so when they're in school, because I'm a teacher by trade, and they're doing these presentations in front of the class, they'll be nervous, and that's why as teachers we're giving that encouragement. Say, do this presentation in front of your parent, right? Do it in front of your sibling, because the more you're able to talk to others and kind of articulate what you're feeling and thinking, you'll have more confidence in other settings as well. So you even having your daughter do that was really like a way of prepping her to be, a strong communicator. And so, again, I would love for you to just like add on, your continual thoughts on that.
Right. And it was also reinforcement of being positive. It taught me even how to be more positive with her, because then I would say, wow, that is a good perspective. Daddy didn't even think of it from that standpoint, that. And so I would encourage her as if I'm learning something new, which I was in a lot of cases. But it was also like, wow, I didn't even think of it from that standpoint. And then she would come back, well, what did you get from it, Daddy? And then I would, share what I got from it. And then, but with never telling her what she got from it was wrong. Oh, no, that's not what it says. And you have to be careful with that, because if you say that, you're like, what, you got that out of that? Then that discourages them. So it was always from me, and I tell parents, when you do that, just make it from an encouraging standpoint. Whether you think what they're saying is incorrect or not, just say, wow, man, I never thought of it from that perspective. I see what you're saying, Then she asked, what did you get from it, Daddy? Then I'll show my perspective, and then she'll incorporate that with hers. Like, so now she's learning not only from what she perceived, but from what Daddy got out of it as well.
I love it. I love it. As we're talking about how we rebuild our homes, I think it also just makes sense. We talk about how we rebuild our communities, right? And so in this role that you are going after with Secretary of State, even in your current position as Alderman, where do you see the importance of us really rebuilding our communities through literacy? Because I think when we have these hubs, they definitely going to get our kids engaged. But I feel like a lot of the disparities, the violence, the lack of community, it actually can be bridged through literacy. So how do you see that this is a tool to actually do that?
Absolutely, because one of the things I start out with anything is the definition of anything. What's the definition of literacy? And if most people just say, oh, just reading. And as I started out here at the top when we started a conversation, it was reading, writing, listening, and communication, that whole communication piece. So how we type that into our community is that effort for us to communicate effectively with one another, not only with our youth, but it starts with our adults. There are people who live next door to each other, don't even communicate with each other or know how to communicate with one another. And so once we start that form of communication, it helps enhance and better our community. Starting on our block, when you get people talking and communicating effectively with one another on their block, it starts then taking it over to a precinct, and then from a precinct to a whole ward, and then it changes your whole community area. So it starts with communicating with one another, and I think that's how we can work to help rebuild our community.
I agree. I totally agree. I feel like even through literacy, there sometimes could be some cross generation miscommunication, right? The youth don't think the adults care, the adults don't think the youth care, the elders don't think anyone want to hear their wisdom and their knowledge, you know. And so I totally agree that it does start within our household, but it also helps us to be able to communicate across areas. I would love to just bring up this point, and I would love to hear what you think. Even with me, so a lot of the work that I do is within the Rosen community, also West Pullman. I grew up in Auburn Gresham. That's my home,
Okay.
right? So in those spaces, I've always been taught, and I think it's just a part of my DNA to be a student first. Like I'm always like, even if I'm doing some work in a community, I want to learn and talk to the people in that community, right? That communication. I want to hear the stories. I want to know how I could best serve. And so I would love to hear what do you think are some of the ways that maybe we can better that communication? Because I think in a lot of times, as I started by saying, I think the elders in the communities have so many stories and so many different things that have helped in the past that we need to know in order to help with our future. And so, how do we get all generations to be a part of the conversation, not just trying to just engage the youth and just, you know, the adults, but how do we get everybody together to have these conversations?
Right. So I always say when you're through learning, you're through. And when you're through learning,
Mhm.
you're through. That means you should never be done learning. So to your point, always wanting to know and learn. So part of that for me is finding someone, especially I encourage our young people, finding someone to sit at the footsteps of someone. We don't have to repeat things that someone else gone through. We can avoid a lot of obstacles by getting wisdom. And so, one thing what you'll find out is that our elders, a lot of them love teaching because a lot of people don't they don't get to tell their stories. And so through those stories, we learn. So I tell somebody to find someone. I don't care if it's your mom, your grandmother, or that next door neighbor. But here's the key part. And this is what I always go back to. And you use this word service. Muhammad Ali said, service is our rent, is the rent that we pay for our life here on earth. He made that quote. And so always tell people, serve. When you serve, it's always, how can I help you? How can I be a blessing? And through that serving, you learn so much. You learn to interact. You learn information. And people are more equipped to share information with you when you are a servant. And you don't have to be a paid elected official or anything. Anybody can serve. So I tell my youth and I tell my adults, get out there, serve.
Yeah, I agree. I think us coming together to serve and be partners in this work, we'll be able to go further, right? Um, so I we're getting towards the end, but I want everyone who's on here to know like what's next. Like what could they expect? Like how could I know hearing your work in the chat, they're like, man, I didn't know that he was running. I didn't know that this was part of that work. I would love for people to know like what's next, where else can you be seen, how can we support? Like what do you know, what do you have going on next?
Ab- Absolutely. So here's the situation. Let me turn this in full circle for you, okay? So back, years ago, in the 80s, I think it was, I have an uncle, we're a week apart. And he used to do gymnastics. And so he used to do gymnastics for Secretary White through his organization,
Mm,
and and so I would go and watch him through the tumbling team, the Jesse White tumbling team. I would go and watch him, but that was before he became Secretary of State. People don't know Secretary White had the tumbling team well before he was Secretary of State. He's had this before he became an elected official, actually. And so through his tumbling, I would be around him, and he would always encourage youth. He had this spirit of pouring back into young people. And so as I got older, not even knowing I would get older, not even knowing that I would get in politics, because I was in corporate America, I was an accountant, that's what I went to school for. And when he decided to run, it was so easily for me to get out there and help him. And I circulated petitions for Secretary White because at that time, the office was marred in corruption and scandal at that time. And I said, that this office needs someone with a servant's heart, and this needs to be a servant seat. And not knowing that, come back full circle, God would call me to seek this seat. And so it's all about what I talked about in that serving. You don't know what's going to happen as you serve, and it's coming back full circle for me. And that's why it's important that this Secretary of State seat remain a servant seat. It's one of the things that I proposed, and I'm the only one that proposed it in this campaign, is that there's 122 driving facilities throughout this whole entire state. And what I want to do is create 122 youth engagement offices within this state through private public partnership. And that's using private dollars so we can hire our youth and teach them civic responsibility and more youth engagement. The Secretary of State office hit our, probably the only office in the state that hit our youth at a very young age, from teaching bike safety to driver's education to voters registration. So at every point we can engage our youth, because those are the things that they want, especially when they want that driver's license or that permit. And when you have them at that point, could teach them about serving, continue to engage them and trust them and what they have to offer, not just always pointing and directing, letting know that our young people, giving them a true seat and a voice at the table, and say, as I do as an alderman, I bring them, I say, what do you think? They're like, I can ask a question here. I say, absolutely, I want you to. So much so that if people told me, if you keep doing this, these people are going to end up running against you. Guess what I told them? I want them to. I want them to. I want them to. That's what we're teaching them, so that they can elevate, so that they can be the next one. Because what you'll realize when people get into this thing, especially when it comes to public service, I tell people there's two people I keep my eyes on. Anybody saying they want to be a preacher, and anybody saying they want to be an elected official. Because it's not something you run to, it's something you run from. It's a calling on your life because you're serving God's people. And so the way people can help us right now, I'd love for them to go for morphillinois.com, register to volunteer, call us at 773-846-0289, because my whole run, I'm good and I'm going to be good. I don't trust anybody else to elevate and give our youth and young adults a true seat and a voice at the table, because I haven't really seen anyone else doing it, and I really appreciate that, that we can do that. And so that's how people can get involved and help.
I love it. And I'm going to share at this moment. I'm so excited because this will not be the last time I get to see Alderman Moore. We actually have an event that is coming up that I want to share the flyer on the screen. So give me 1 second. So this is an event that we are having the pleasure to be able to be a part of. Myself, as I shared, one of my dear friends, Joseph Williams, that I know knows you, Alderman Moore. We are so excited to be a part of a conversation that will be held on November the 13th from 12 to 3 p.m. at Mount Hermon MB Church, which is 7848 South Normal, Chicago, Illinois. Again, it's going to be a come and explore and discuss the world of literacy. Myself and Joseph both run nonprofits that are centered around literacy. And as you heard, Alderman Moore is passionate about really rebuilding our communities through literacy. It's going to be an amazing, amazing conversation. Again, I'm honored to be able to be in that space with him and be able to share, about this work. Is there anything you would want to add to tell people if they want to join on that day, what they should look forward to?
Absolutely. First of all, you're talking about honor with me. I tell people I'm just dressed up dirt that can be blown away at any time. I get so excited when others like yourself who are involved. And I mean, you could be doing anything right now on a Monday night or any other nights that you're doing. But I'm telling you, when people are willing to serve and give back, that's what touches my heart, and that's what excites me. In any way I can always, like I do with Joseph Williams, elevate our other people. Not worrying about what this person going to do, what that person's going to do in terms of titles and positions. As long as you're helping someone, God said, when you've done unto the least of them, you've done unto me. And so when people are helping the least of them, that's what all I'm concerned about.
Awesome. So you all join us, join us, please. It's going to be an amazing conversation. And you'll be able to learn more about our work. You'll be able to learn more about what you could do even to get involved and be able to be a part of change when it comes to literacy and really rebuilding our neighborhoods. And so I just want to be able to say thank you. Thank you so much
You're welcome. No, thank you.
for your time and just being able to have this conversation. Thank you for everyone who joined us. The comments in the chat, people were very excited about the different initiatives that were brought up. Just the importance of literacy, just being able to do this work in partnership. So again, I just wanted to take this time and say thank you for our community talk on National Literacy Day.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. God bless you. Appreciate it so much. And thank everybody who joined in.
Yes. Till next time, you all. Take care.